So institutions have all the money because everybody put all their money into institutions. Like there's only so much retail capital out there to buy into DeFi. And I think the retail capital can get the blockchain industry to 5 or 10 trillion, and it can get DeFi to 1 or 2 trillion. But really we want to be in the hundreds of trillions in our industry, and we want DeFi to be in the tens of trillions. And I think the only way that happens is that all the world's institutions have a clear and simple way to adopt, and a good reason to adopt DeFi. I think the way it happens is that
institutions are about to start pouring money into crypto and DeFi. Today I sit down with two crypto industry leaders, founder and CEO of Chainlink, Sergey Nazarov, and founder and CEO of Aave, Stani Kulachov, live in New York at SmartCon. These two leaders claim institutions are about to 10x this space overnight. Smash the like button, subscribe to Altcoin Daily. Institutions are about to start pouring into crypto, and the next 10 years will look like this.
Hello, Wall Street. Hello, Washington. Hello, New York. My name is Aaron, Altcoin Daily. I run one of YouTube's biggest crypto YouTube channels, and these two gentlemen here need a little introduction. Founder of Chainlink, founder of Aave. And I remember coming to crypto conferences back in the day, and most of the people attending, cypherpunks, tech people, the crypto culture has changed a little bit. I've been rubbing elbows with Wall Street, bankers, congressmen, White House representatives, SWIFT, even the Federal Reserve. So my question, gentlemen, for both of you, and we'll start with Sergey, is how important is it for institutions to adopt DeFi, and how do you see it happening?
Yeah, so institutions have all the money because everybody put all their money into institutions. And while some people will take their money out of institutions and get their own private keys to use DeFi, I think in many cases the clients of institutions will want to use DeFi through the institution, right? So the institution will become the conduit through which large, and I'm going to say large, I mean hundreds of trillions of dollars, right? Like there's only so much retail capital out there to buy into DeFi. And I think the retail capital can get the blockchain industry to 5 or 10 trillion, and it can get DeFi to 1 or 2 trillion. But really we want to be in the hundreds of trillions in our industry, and we want DeFi to be in the tens of trillions. And I think the only way that happens is that all the world's institutions have a clear and simple way to adopt, and a good reason to adopt DeFi. I think the way it happens is that the economics and the lower risk of DeFi attract the retail community and the fintech community and the institutional community to all use DeFi for yield, and yield that in reality has better risk management than yield from traditional systems. I think that still isn't understood. I think it's partly understood that the traditional systems and DeFi are somehow becoming equivalent or something. Like DeFi is as good or close to as good. I personally think that the transparency of DeFi makes the ability to manage risk much, much better than in traditional systems where, one day Silicon Valley Bank is solvent, the next day Silicon Valley Bank is insolvent, right? Because you don't really know what's inside of Silicon Valley Bank. And then once it becomes clearer that the yield is greater in DeFi and lower risk, then the question becomes, what are the technical rails? What are the cross-chain ways to send money and capital from my institution to a DeFi protocol like Aave Horizon? What is the way for me to comply? And look, there's an automated compliance system that makes sure that when I use Aave Horizon, I am complying, and so it's easy for me to onboard and use Aave Horizon. And then what are all the risk factors like data and other things and the contracts? And those have been vetted and validated, and all the inputs into the contracts and the contracts themselves have been operating very successfully for a decade plus. So you know what? I am going to put $100 billion of my client's capital into Aave Horizon, right? So that's how I think it happens, right? I think people realize the value of it, and then there's a technical pathway to putting the value in there. Stani and Aave and the Aave Horizon team are doing a great job at creating, the value of DeFi, and I think Chainlink is providing the technical pathway to get more and more institutional capital into that great product.
Stani, I want to ask you specifically about Aave Horizon, but before that, any thoughts on the general question of how important are institutions adopting DeFi, or how do you see it happening?
Yeah, I think it's very important. And me and Sergey, we've been doing this for, I think, since 2017, 2018, when we first started to talk about how DeFi can scale and what's the future of DeFi. And that was when DeFi was in point. That was very early days. We didn't have stable coins on Ethereum, for example. But we were believers in the technology because of the properties that DeFi can bring, being able to have best execution, automatization with smart contracts, and the transparency and the non-custodial aspect of decentralized finance. And obviously what happened over the past half a decade is that DeFi has been able to prove to become extremely resilient infrastructure. And we proved it with these native crypto assets. So during the Black Friday, for example, Aave had at roughly 76 billion worth of net deposits. And we liquidated 200 million worth of collateral in less than an hour. It shows how you can build really resilient systems on the blockchain and ensure full transparency, that every single market participant has the same access. Now, if we can do this for native crypto assets this successfully, and obviously native crypto assets will grow down the line, the second step is to think about, so how do we take this thing that works really well in decentralized finance, Aave protocol, Chainlink, and take this combination and then just reapply to traditional assets, but in the same format, in tokenized form. So why this is important is because down the line, the biggest growing asset base will be traditional assets that are currently in the existing banking rails that could actually benefit from decentralized finance. And the way the benefit is to have a market opportunity. So if you have a market opportunity to collateralize these assets, borrow against, that creates utility. And by using smart contracts, you can get a better efficiency. We do that already on the native assets side, and being able to borrow from DeFi at a lower cost than centralized businesses, for example. And institutions are important because they are essentially the distributors of DeFi. And what happens in the future is that these traditional rails are just going to be replaced by blockchain rails, stablecoins, and decentralized finance in an embedded DeFi way. And the market opportunity needs to be there as well. So when the traditional assets and interest rates are going to go down, that increases the opportunity to integrate DeFi because there is a market opportunity there as well. So I see institutions quite crucial in the adoption.
So let's talk about one of Aave's most promising products, Aave Horizon. And as I understand it, it's a way to allow institutions to tokenize their real-world assets to be able to borrow stablecoin, whether it's USDC or Aave's native stablecoin. And I guess as we're learning more about this, can you help us understand the key success factors for Aave's Horizon? How is that going to look as it continues to see success in its future growth?
Yeah, Aave Horizon is exactly kind of like the next frontier of DeFi. Taking something that works really well is battle tested over multiple years in terms of architecture, infrastructure, and applying to these traditional assets. So Aave Horizon is an Aave market where you can use tokenized assets as a collateral from money market funds, tokenized credit, tokenized funds, and down the line as well, equities, ETFs, debts, any sort of traditional assets can be used as a collateral. And you can borrow stable coins. So two perspectives there. So one from the borrower's perspective, when you have all your financial opportunities and your financial assets on the same substrate on chain, you'll be able to access these opportunities 24/7 basis. And the Black Friday is a great example where if you would have traditional assets off-chain in the traditional rails, you won't be able to access during weekends or outside of trading hours. But also from the yield perspective and the lending perspective, you will be able to lend your asset against stablecoins against these traditional assets. And that's a really unique offering. So over time, I think the model of Horizon is a way to actually get institutions on board, bring their assets on chain, and more importantly, creating the utility of these assets, because just tokenizing by itself isn't really innovative. But once you start to tokenize, use these assets as a collateral, being able to exchange and allow a developer ecosystem to actually build these interesting structured products, you get into a place where the network effects are going to be stronger. And with using smart contracts, the cost of DeFi or just cost of doing business in finance is going to be lower. And what I like the most is the transparency. So you will be able to, and anyone will be able to assess the risk from the same standpoint and make better decisions because everyone has the same level playing field and access to information.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask a question to the audience. Do you guys think crypto is more volatile today or less volatile today? Who thinks crypto is more volatile today? Who thinks crypto is less volatile today? A resounding less volatile. But still, of course, gentlemen, as we know, volatility and uncertainty is still something that kind of plagues people's opinions on the space. And certainly quality protocols like Aave and Chainlink have rose above the rest. But my question is, how do Aave and Chainlink help ensure stability and confidence in the market, especially in times of volatility?
Yeah, so I view Aave and Chainlink as kind of two parts of what makes up a financial institution in the real world, right? So in the real world, you have the part of the financial institution that makes the financial products, and you have their IT department that allows them to operate, right? So I feel like the smart contracts of Aave and the conditions of those contracts and the risk management of those contracts is the extremely high standard that the Aave team and community have set. And then for those contracts to work, you need a number of inputs. Data inputs, you need bridging. For institutions, I think you're going to need even more inputs like compliance-related oracles, risk oracles. For example, we recently on Aave Horizon launched risk oracles using Chainlink CRE, which we put into production and made live at this conference. And so I think that what you've really done with the DeFi ecosystem is you've pulled apart a financial institution where everything would opaquely be in one entity. And no one would understand how the conditions are made, and no one would understand how the IT systems work, and no one would have assurances as to how price was determined. And all of these things would be opaque, right? And you would have to trust the brand of the institution until there was a problem, like with Credit Suisse failing in Switzerland or a Silicon Valley Bank in the US or a whole bunch of other examples. And I think the real guarantees of DeFi is actually that the standards for how these contracts work and how these oracles work are very high. And so there are teams that openly and publicly set those standards, right? The Aave team sets the standards for how the markets work. Chainlink sets the standards for how the oracle infrastructure works. And so everyone can look in and understand, here's how the system works as a whole. And you have groups of people that are specialized, right? And they're specialized in what they're good at. And it's really, I think, impressive and great that those specialized groups can come together to build, something, help together build something like Aave and Aave Horizon, and have it have, at many points now, over 100 billion, I think, or something like that, 80, 90 billion in Aave, right?
Yeah.
So it's been really impressive to see the high standards that have been set by the Aave community and that have been set by the Chainlink community, and how those two sets of high standards can work together to make a reliable financial product.
I would say also that these tokenized assets are really, they're layered, and you have the technical part of it of ensuring the pricing of the asset, but also you have the kind of a risk assessment aspect of it as well. And it's a kind of like a more of a mixture of like traditional risk management with also more kind of a sophisticated technical solutions to actually bring the right data, but also apply the right strategy on pricing assets. So typically, I think when it comes to oracles, I find oracles more of like strategies. How do you price an asset? And in many cases, it's not necessarily just taking a particular market price of an asset, but you might have to think about different peculiarities. For example, if there is fewer price sources for an asset, you might need to set certain bounds where the price, for example, can move within ranges and add different kinds of protection measures. So it's a really kind of a unique field. But once you enable that, that actually unlocks the utility of these assets. So tokenized assets are nothing until they're actually utilized. And utilization, in most cases, will mean to a lot of these traditional financial institutions, DeFi. So I think Horizon is a great way to package something that we all love in DeFi at the moment into something that is really usable for traditional financial institutions as more of these assets are coming on chain.
Crypto adoption happens so fast, you take a break and you miss it. So thinking about, this question's for Stani about Aave Horizon, thinking about the next year or so, short to midterm, what are the most important areas of focus for Aave Horizon, and how is secure Oracle infrastructure helping achieving that goal?
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting next few years. Obviously, Aave v4 is coming out, which allows to create different kinds of risk profiles in the markets without segregating liquidity and concentrating the liquidity provisioning as well. And what's going to be interesting, especially when it comes to Aave v4 or these tokenized assets, is the strategy that I was pricing strategy. And you're going to see assets that have also volatility. Crypto is not the only place that has volatility. And equities, for example, how do you price and have price discovery during the weekends? What kind of mechanisms could be used? How do you guarantee the liquidity? And now we've been focusing quite a lot from Horizon's perspective on off-chain liquid assets. So assets that are liquid off-chain and they're redeemable. And that's how we grew the Horizon market to become $500 million market within 2 months from the launch, which is pretty amazing growth, given that these assets are permissioned on the asset issuer level. But in the future, for example, we need to figure out how we can price equities, how we can price debt, also liquid asset infrastructure. We're going to see in the future asset classes that we never have been able to tap into or even imagine. And that's going to be a big part of the unlock as well.
One of my final questions for Sergey before final thoughts. You talk to some traditional crypto people. They say, hey, Wall Street's good, but why do we need to interoperate with them? You talk to some traditional Wall Street people, say crypto's great, but why do we need to interoperate with them? So, Sergey, why is it important that DeFi and TradFi infrastructure seamlessly interoperate?
Yeah, so I think what'll what'll be really necessary is that it's easy for capital to flow from the institutional world into great protocols like Aave Horizon that has all these tokenized assets available in an easy-to-use, efficient, highly liquid, large market. And the conditions under which capital can move from large institutions technically, cross-chain conditions, data conditions, compliance conditions, and others, are really quite numerous. So they have a lot of the conditions that need to be met. And one of those conditions is actually the ability to move the capital from their existing systems on-chain. And so Chainlink is working with a lot of institutions to enable them to be able to take all the capital they have and to move it on-chain for the purchase of tokenized assets, the tokenization of assets, and the movement of that value into DeFi protocols like Aave Horizon. Because we really see a very bright future where I think those institutions and the clients of those institutions are going to want to put their capital into Aave Horizon because of the superior yield, the superior transparency, the superior reduction of risk. I think that's just kind of going to be the way of the world.
Mm-hmm. We are going to end today's session by standing in the front of the stage, an opportunity for pictures. But I want to give these gentlemen an opportunity for brief final thoughts, if any, either what's next for Chainlink and Aave generally, or any kind of call to action you have for those viewing in the audience or at home.
Yeah, I just have one thing to say, and that's DeFi will win.
That's what I was going to say.
DeFi will win. My name is Aaron at Altcoin Daily. Look me up on YouTube. Check out Chainlink and Aave and all their suites of products. Thank you, everybody in the audience. Thank you at home. We'll stand for pictures and have a great day. Give these guys a round of applause.